Now, Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
7:07 on a Thursday morning. We've got Grover Norquist of Americans for Tax Reform. Good morning, Grover.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Hey, so the new hotness is Rick Perry's tax reform plan. What do you think of it?
I like it a great deal. I think there's three key parts to it. The first is it's a flat tax. 20% takes the top rate from 35 down to 20, both for businesses and for individuals. Exempts family of four the first $50,000. So it's one single rate. Doesn't increase taxes on lower income people, does dramatically reduce taxes on savings and investment, gets rid of the death tax, gets rid of the capital gains tax. Very, very pro-growth. If we were to pass this, it would explode in terms of jobs creation. The other thing he does is really smart, and that is he sets it up as an alternative tax system. So if you like the old system, if you've organized your life around the IRS's preferences on home ownership and other things, you don't have to move. You can stay exactly where you are, and other people can move into the lower rates with fewer deductions and credits. So all of the, lobbies that have worked so hard to get little goodies into the tax code, they won't fight as hard to stop this as they might otherwise. So I think it's very wise to set up as an alternative. Over time, almost everybody's going to shift to the new plan. It's so good. And the third thing he does is he sets as a national goal bringing government spending down to 18% of GDP, 18% of the economy. It used to be, 19, 20%. Obama's jumped it up to about 25%. He says let's bring it down to 18, which is, sort of an historical level. We never under Bush had a national goal of limiting government spending as a percentage of the economy, and that's why things were allowed to drift. You only get what you measure. If you don't measure something, if you don't have a metric that you're aiming at, the chances of getting there is very slight. So the Bush people just allowed spending to drift up, and of course Obama put it into warp speed in terms of additional spending. And for Perry to say, look, our goal is to take spending down to 18% of GDP, limit it there. If he'd said 17 or 19, I'd have gone fine. But to have a target to measure it is the key thing.
I have a question about the super duper committee.
Super secret committee.
The super secret, super duper committee that's supposed to decide how we're going to reduce our deficit. I mean, some details are beginning to leak out about a Democratic proposal to reduce the deficit by $2.5 to $3 trillion. But they do so by not only making a few cuts, but big revenue increases and cuts in Medicare. So I guess the question I have is that going to go anywhere? Because Republicans are going to be aligned against that. How do you see that whole thing playing out, or is it going to just end in gridlock?
Well, you could see this 2 months ago. What the Democrats have done is they appointed that committee, not budget experts. They put the head of their political operation for House races and the head of their campaigns for Senate races. They put their political people on there, and also their tax increase people on that committee. So their goal is to come out and talk about a wonderful plan to have a big reduction in the deficit. It'll not be written down. It'll be a series of essays. Remember, we negotiated with Barack Obama for 6 months, and he kept talking about these massive sacrifices he was willing to make, and they were never written down. They were essays. They were short speeches. There was a lot of rhetoric, nothing written down. This will be, let's do all this other stuff. It's not going anywhere. The Republicans have made it very clear. They're not raising taxes. They want to reduce spending. The Democrats have no interest in reducing spending. They just want to raise taxes. And remember they kept talking about 10-to-1 spending cuts to tax increases,
right.
Or 4-to-1. Their opening bid on this one is worse than 1-to-1. So you can imagine how it gets worse if the Republicans were foolish enough to start a conversation at 1-to-1. So what the Democrats are going to do is not have any real spending restraint offered. We'll go to the committee won't come up with an idea, and then we go to automatic cuts across the board, which is an inartful way to do it, but is better than tax increases.
All right, on the flat tax, I mean, you've been around this town. You know the insides of Washington better than anybody, especially when it comes to tax situations. Is it? You hear Democrats, you've even heard some Republicans say, look, this flat tax plan that Perry has, or any flat tax plan, is going to benefit the rich or the wealthy a lot more than it would the middle class and the poor. Is that true?
Well, it doesn't disadvantage lower-income people. What Herman Cain's 999 plan would do is set a 9% sales tax and a 9% VAT alongside a 9% income tax. Well, that's a little rough on low-income people who don't pay any income taxes, and it's a little rough on retired people who don't pay any income taxes and would now have this rather significant sales tax, value-added tax added to their cost. Perry avoids that. He says for low-income people, stay in the present plan. If you got a refundable earned income tax credit, you're fine. Stay with that.
So everybody will pay less in taxes under the flat tax plan, but it'll be just more of an increase for those who are wealthy or rich, mainly because they pay more in taxes anyway.
Right. If you're paying a lot more than everybody else, when you cut taxes, you'll get a larger tax cut than people who aren't paying much in taxes.
Oh, that makes sense.
Kind of a tautology.
Okay, but again, here's my point, and I just want to know the political angle from this. Can you pass that? Can you convince people that right now, hey, we're going to make this new tax system, and the rich are going to benefit a lot more than the middle class or the poor? I mean, is there an appetite for that right now? Can you actually get that passed?
Yes, and the reason for that is that the Republicans will hold the House after the next election, and they'll probably take the Senate. There are 23 Democrats seats up for re-election. The Republicans only need to gain 4, and about half of those Democrat seats are in Republican-trending states because these are the people who were elected in the wave Democratic landslide of 2006. If Perry were elected president, he'd have a Republican House and Senate, and the arguments against Perry's plan are exactly the same arguments the Democrats made against Reagan's tax cuts in 1981. Oh, you're cutting taxes on people who save and invest and create jobs. Yeah, I guess we are, but we have a different attitude and thesis on how you create jobs. We don't do stimulus. We do lower taxes.
You think there are enough Republicans on board with the flat tax plan right now to pass it in the House and the Senate?
Yeah, and the reason for that is that Perry's plan is very similar. It's a little more dramatic, but fairly similar to Paul Ryan's budget, which has already gained a majority in the House and had almost every Republican in the Senate also endorse it. So Ryan's plan is a 25% top rate, but also gets rid of the death tax and so on. This is 20%. It's a little stronger, more robust than Paul Ryan's plan, but should be easily supported by all Republicans.
Good to have you on the program. Thanks, Grover.
Thanks, Grover.
Hey, good to be with you.